Speaking of people who could use a little bit of career insurance, Al Franken is gone. And he just came out and said, as I said, that he is innocent, that he didn't do any of these things, that all of these women are either liars or misconstruing his actions. It seems to me it's hard to misconstrue somebody grabbing your in the middle of a photo line. But, you know, to each his own. So Franken stepped down after the Democrats turned on him. They turned on him in the last 48 hours, really not because of the new reports about Franken, but because they wished to throw Republicans under the moral bus. That was the goal here. The pretext they used for throwing Franken out was this report from The Atlantic that Franken had sexually harassed a woman at a Media Matters party. There's a woman named Tina DuPoy who wrote for The Atlantic. She says, "It happened at a Media Matters party during the first Obama inauguration. It was a great time to be a Democrat. Not only had we just elected the first African-American president of the United States, but Franken's race had triggered a recount, leaving leftists giddy we would soon have a supermajority in the Senate." As you recall, Al Franken stole that Senate seat from Norm Coleman. They just kept recounting the votes until enough felons were counted that Al Franken was the senator from Minnesota. This woman writes, "This is my first inauguration. I'd never been in the proverbial room where it happens. My experience with government at that point was being a ward of the court in foster care. Noting that I had an interest in politics and in grandstanding, my foster dad set up an internship for me at the district office of Representative George Miller. The summer before my senior year of high school, as an intern, I answered calls, thumbed through the congressional record, etc." She says, "I've been married for 2 years at the time. I don't let my husband touch me like Al Franken did in public." Right, here's what she says. "I saw Al Franken. I only bug celebrities for pictures when it'll make my foster mom happy. She loves Franken, so I asked to get a picture with him. We posed for the shot. He immediately put his hand on my waist, grabbing a handful of flesh. I froze. Then he squeezed, at least twice." What a class act, that Al Franken. So Franken gave a statement in which he said, all of this has been misconstrued. He's totally innocent, but he's leaving anyway. And then he blabbered on for a while about activism and the wonders of activism. And again, he just kept calling them liars over and over and over, hoping that he would have another shot at this. That's what Al Franken is hoping. Al Franken is hoping that he leaves in quote-unquote disgrace, that he does his penance, and then he comes back in a couple of years, having cleansed himself of the stigma of this. And in order to ensure that, he immediately wheeled and hit Trump and Roy Moore. Roy Moore, of course, the Senate Alabama Republican candidate who's been credibly accused of child molestation. Now, what's hilarious about all of this is watching the Democrats swing to push Franken out. So just a couple of days ago, we played the audio yesterday of Kirsten Gillibrand saying that she didn't know whether Franken should step down. He should really make his own decision. And then yesterday, she actually said Franken should step down. So she changed her opinion. Kirsten Gillibrand, who's been treated as a possible 2020 candidate, there is no better weather vane than Kirsten Gillibrand. I mean, there are no better weather vanes on planet Earth than Kirsten Gillibrand. And the woman has her finger in the air at all times, seeing which way the wind is blowing. She realized that she realized the wind was blowing against Franken, so she stepped out in front of that and said Franken should resign. This is what she said yesterday.
Well, obviously, there were new allegations today, and enough is enough. I mean, this is a conversation we've been having for a very long time, and it's a conversation that this country needs to have. And I think when we start having to talk about the differences between sexual assault and sexual harassment and unwanted groping, you are having the wrong conversation. You need to draw a line in the sand and say none of it is okay. None of it is acceptable. And we, as elected leaders, should absolutely be held to a higher standard, not a lower standard.
Well, that's a wild switch from Kirsten Gillibrand, who 5 seconds ago was saying that basically Al Franken might stay, but Roy Moore should go, and President Trump's a sexual abuser, but not Al Franken. This is all a wild shift. I will say that the logic that's used here, that we have to lump all of this activity together, is a little bit disturbing to me. I don't think that Harvey Weinstein should be lumped together with Al Franken, and I don't think that Al Franken should be lumped together with, like, Clarence Thomas, who apparently made a crude sexual remark to Anita Hill one time, or was alleged to have done so. This does not seem to me that all of these things should be grouped together or pose equivalent threats to careers. Some of these activities are truly horrifying, and your career should be ended and you should end up in jail. And some of these activities are bad, you're a creep, but I'm not sure that it rises to the level of the same outrage as a Harvey Weinstein, for example. In any case, what this is really about for Democrats, and we all know it, what this is really about is seizing the moral high ground. What Democrats truly want to do here is not push out Franken because they care about Franken, not push out John Conyers because they care about John Conyers. They want to push all these people out so that they can turn and swivel and hit Donald Trump and Roy Moore. So Senator Mazie Hirono, the Democrat of Hawaii, she came out yesterday and she said, you know, now that Franken's going, it'd be really great is if Trump and Moore stepped aside.
And they say what Al Franken did was wrong, but it's not even in the same ballpark. Why take this step? And why not also be calling for President Trump and Roy Moore to step aside?
Well, I would love it if both of them stepped aside, because I have said publicly that President Trump has admitted to being a sexual predator, and as for Roy Moore, the credible allegations of him being a child molester, basically, it should cause both of them to look at themselves and step down. I would love it. But at the same time, I'm looking for, where are the Republican voices? Where is their outrage? In fact, on the opposite end, they're coming forward to support Roy Moore. How's that for totally inappropriate positions?
So two things can be true at once. One, Democrats can be right to shove these people out the door, and Republicans should do the same with their own bad candidates. And two, this can be totally politically driven, because it is totally politically driven. I mean, there's no question about it. The fact is that the Democrats suffer zero repercussions for getting rid of Franken. The Democratic governor of Minnesota, Mark Dayton, is about to appoint his lieutenant governor. Her name escapes me for the moment, but he's about to appoint her, a Democrat, to fill Franken's seat so Democrats don't lose a seat in the Senate. Forcing out John Conyers means nothing because some relative of John Conyers will fill that seat. It's very easy to take the moral high ground when it doesn't mean actually sacrificing anything. Anytime Democrats have to think about sacrificing something, they rally around the flag of the sexual abuser the same way that Republicans are currently rallying around the flags of alleged sexual abusers. So there's no question that there's a bunch of hypocrisy going on here. And a bunch of political posturing. Bernie Sanders, another example. He came out yesterday, or this morning rather, and he said that Donald Trump and Roy Moore should both step down because Al Franken is going. Earlier this week, Bernie Sanders was literally running away from the cameras when he was asked about Al Franken. So what's happened here is that the Democrats waited until the Republican National Committee and Trump re-endorsed Moore, and they said, here's our chance to draw a contrast. Now, is that smart politics? Of course it's smart politics. Now they get to claim that they have the moral high ground. And Republicans, meanwhile, are shoving the moral high ground away from them as fast as humanly possible. I mean, they're taking that moral high ground and they are running from it as fast as humanly possible. So much so, they are actually seeing Republicans now come out and start to defend Al Franken. So last night on Laura Ingram's show on Fox News, Newt Gingrich was talking with Ingram, and both Gingrich and Ingram were actually defending Al Franken because they understand what's happening next, right? Here's the logic. Well, we're not going to let Trump and Moore go until you get rid of Al Franken. The Democrats say, fine, we'll get rid of Al Franken. Then the Republicans say, well, hold up a second. Maybe you don't want to get rid of Al Franken. Maybe that's a bad idea to get rid of Al Franken. It's all political partisanship at its finest. Here's Gingrich with Ingram, suddenly defending Al Franken, a guy who routinely grabs women by the butt in the middle of photo lines, apparently.
Al Franken was a comedian. Comedians often do weird things. He was in the entertainment business. He was doing the kind of things people in the entertainment business do. Now, I have not, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see anything that they've said he's done since he was a senator. I don't think they've said...
I've tried to lose track. I think there are a couple allegations of inappropriate conduct, but I think it's minor stuff.
I mean, but the point is, we're in one of those weird American moments when running around lynching people feels so good.
Yeah, it feels good to them.
I mean, if you go back and you go back and watch the YouTube of Clarence Thomas.
I was just going to say, my old boss.
Yeah,
you know how he felt.
Who, by the way, was wonderful and swore in Callista.
Oh, great.
Great moment. And, fellow Georgia and everything. But you go back and you look at what he said about an electronic lynching. And then you look at what we're saying. I mean, again, Conyers had a lot of good reasons to retire. Yep. But on the other hand, no hearings, no witness.
No, there's no due process. If you're accused and you're a man, you're accused.
So here we are now, right? So here we are. We've got Laura Ingram and Newt Gingrich defending Al Franken. You think they're doing that because they really like Al Franken, or they think Al Franken ought to get a fair shake? I mean, they were both calling for the prosecution of Hillary Clinton based on less evidence than Al Franken here. And Hillary Clinton, by the way, should have gone to jail. Okay, the idea that they are out defending Al Franken today, the only reason they're defending Al Franken is because they want to defend Roy Moore, obviously. That's what's going on here. And the Democrats are only throwing Al Franken under the bus because they want to get Roy Moore and Donald Trump. So understand, this is all a political game. Don't suddenly think that politicians grew moral spines. They didn't. Okay, I would be happy if they had, and maybe we can force them into doing so. But I don't really see the purpose of pretending that there's no politics at work here at all, because that's just silly. Well, in a second, I want to play you what Al Franken actually had to say. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Birch Gold. So, with the increasing uncertainty of the upcoming upcoming events, with disaster in the air, it seems on the foreign front with regard to North Korea, with the fact that the stock market is at all-time highs, you can expect it to readjust at some point in the future. That's why you should at least be hedging your bets with some precious metals, and that's what Birch Gold is there for. Birch Gold Group has a long-standing track record of continued success, thousands of satisfied clients, countless 5-star reviews, and A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. You can contact Birch Gold Group right now to request a free information kit on physical precious precious metals. The comprehensive 16-page kit reveals how gold and silver can protect your savings, how you can legally move your IRA or 401k out of risky stocks and bonds and into a precious metals IRA. To get that no-cost, no-obligation kit, go to birchgold.com/Ben. That's birchgold.com/Ben. Ask all your questions, get all your information, and then when you're ready, invest in precious metals. It's good to hedge your bets. It's just worthwhile to have some of your portfolio in gold. I certainly do. Talk to my friends over at Birch Gold Group. They are trustworthy folks, and you can see I did an interview with them that you can view online as well. Okay, so we do finally have tape of Al Franken. The fact that Democrats thought this guy was a viable 2020 contender tells you everything you need to know about the state of the Democratic Party. But here is Al Franken on the floor of the Senate resigning, but not before claiming that he's innocent and that he's being martyred.
Nevertheless, today I am announcing that in the coming weeks, I will be resigning as a member of the United States Senate. I, of all people, am aware that there is some irony in the fact that I am leaving while a man who has bragged on tape about his history of sexual assault sits in the Oval Office, and a man who has repeatedly preyed on young girls campaigns for the Senate with the full support of his party.
Okay, and so that's the line the Democrats are going to use. So when you say this isn't political, of course it's political. Now, Franken were smart. If he had any sense of the moment, what he would do instead is he would do a full mea culpa, right? He'd get up there and instead of denying that instead of saying the accusers are a bunch of terrible people who are lying about him and that he's a wounded innocent, he then went on to say, I'll be fine. You know, I was a comedian before this, I'll be fine. Everything will be fine. What he should have done, if he were smart, is he would have said, all of these women, I believe them. Women deserve to be believed. I made a lot of mistakes. I apologize fulsomely for the mistakes that I've made. And in this new America, I hope to change for the better. And President Trump is evidence that the Republicans are not changing for the better. If I have to step down, as I should, then I call on President Trump to step down as well, right? He should have actually turned it into a rallying cry, but he's not smart enough to do that. He doesn't have the wherewithal to do that. If he'd done that, the media would have actually orgasmed. Like, people actually would have experienced physical pleasure. And at that point, he could have run for president in 2020, but he doesn't have the brains to do that. As I say, the Republicans, meanwhile, are rushing to defend Roy Moore. And this is something that I think is both stupid and backwards. So there are a bunch of people saying, well, you know, the Democrats are only doing this for political reasons, so why should we cave? And there is this mentality on the right now that when the Democrats want something, you don't give it to them just because they want it, right? But that's not the case with Roy Moore, okay? There's this new mentality that I think has taken hold among a lot of Republicans, among some conservatives, that just because the Democrats don't want something, or just because the Democrats want something, you can't give it to them. That the Democrats, because they're political, everything that they say is false. That's not right, and it also leads you down a pretty dark road. And I think that, you know, Steve Bannon is sort of the avatar of this. I think Steve Bannon really helps make this sort of mentality come to fruition, right? I talked a little bit about him yesterday with regard to what he was saying about Roy Moore and turning on Mitt Romney, and it is indicative of how a lot of Republicans are thinking right now, which is that Roy Moore must be innocent because the Democrats say he's guilty, that Roy Moore must be defended because the Democrats want him out. I don't see why you would surrender the moral high ground this way on a race that Republicans, you know, if they had thrown Moore out earlier or if Moore resigned, they would have won this race walking away. Even if Doug Jones, the Democrat, were to win this seat, Republicans would be able to regain the seat in 4 years when it comes up again. It's a heavily red state. But instead, the Republicans seem to be pushing the high ground away with both hands, saying, listen, the Democrats got to play in the muck for a while. Now we're going to play in the muck. They don't understand. There's a different standard that applies to Republicans. There is, as there should be, because not that there should be a different standard for Republicans, but the higher standard should apply to both Republicans and Democrats. And I don't see the Republicans recognizing that baseline reality. It is a baseline reality, by the way, that is the case. You see that with the Republicans attacking Mitt Romney, right? Stephen Bannon yesterday attacking Mitt Romney. And I just thought to myself, there is a strain of the Republican Party that now says the worse the person, the more we ought to support them. And I think that that's true among Democrats when it's politically beneficial for that to be the case. I think they'll get there too, and they'll use the polarization in politics as an excuse to get there. And Republicans aren't wrong that a lot rides on politics, that a lot is at stake. But they are wrong when they think that the way that they are going to win is by embracing the worst elements of their own egos and their own ids. I just think that's a huge mistake. Now, with all that said, I understand why why there's so much frustration among Republicans, why there's so much frustration that Democrats have been getting away with this stuff for 20 years, and not just on the sexual assault front, but on the corruption front. This is a story that sort of went unmentioned, but it's amazing. The New York Times has a report on the operation of the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau under the command of interim director Mick Mulvaney. And in the article is a real piece of news that a group of bureaucrats have decided to hijack the CFPB as much as possible and operate in secret to defy Mulvaney. This is according to hotair.com. Here's what they actually said. Agency employees said they were scrutinizing every comment and memo from their new leader for hints about their future. Some employees, including a few of the Bureau's top officials, have welcomed their new leader. Others, pointing to Mr. Mulvaney's earlier hostility toward the agency and its mission, are quietly resisting. One small group calls itself Dumbledore's Army, according to two of the people who are familiar with their discussions. The name is a reference to a secret resistance force in the Harry Potter books. An atmosphere of intense anxiety has taken hold, several employees said. So, first of all, read another book. Not every reference has to be about Harry Potter. But second of all, there's an actual band of bureaucrats inside the CFPB trying to buck Trump and calling himself Dumbledore's Army. And then you wonder why Republicans are so frustrated that they say, we need someone who's willing to break the rules to stop a bunch of people who are willing to break the rules. The frustration with partisan politics has driven both sides mad. And if the standard can only be restored through hypocrisy, then better that the standard should be restored through the hypocrisy of going after Al Franken in order to get to Roy Moore than that the standard never be restored at all.